But in the case of these coins you're talking about, these are coins that have reacted with their environment and produced kind of all various colors of the rainbow, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So if any of your listeners have ever left out like a silver spoon for a long time, you'll
Hmm.
notice after a few months that spoon will start to tone. It'll have these like oil slick colors developing on it, and that's just a natural process that happens with certain precious metals like silver.
All right, today on the Cabbage Coins podcast, we have a special episode. We are talking about toned Morgan dollars. I have a guest, Jacob Matiyevsky. Jacob leads or is the owner-operator of a company called Monster Tone Morgans. Jacob, welcome to the Cabbage Coins podcast. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your business and what got you into coins.
Thanks, Tony, for having me on. Yeah, my name is Jacob. I specialize in rainbow toned Morgan dollars. That's my bread and butter. So I buy and sell all kinds of different beautifully toned coins from all sorts of ranges, from the lower end entry level pieces to the really spectacular top of the line examples.
Awesome. So what really got you into coins initially? And did you get started with toned coins or colorful coins, or kind of what was the progression from starting with coins and getting into these crazy colorful, super pricey, crazy colorful Morgans?
Yeah, sort of. So I didn't exactly start with toned coins. I started when I was 9 years old or so, collecting the state quarters, actually, with my grandmother. She got us two albums, and we would help each other complete both of the albums as we would just look for coins in our change. And that's really what got me introduced to coins a little bit. And then a couple years later, I discovered coin roll hunting, where you could go and look through rolls of coins from the bank and try to find coins that were valuable or made out of silver. And started doing that a little bit, and eventually found a few things and started thinking about, okay, do I keep these? Do I sell these? What do I do? So I ended up joining a couple of Facebook groups
Mm-hmm.
where you could buy, sell, and trade coins. And that
Very
was really
familiar.
cool. I didn't even know these communities existed before that. But one day, somebody posted a picture of a toned Morgan dollar. And as soon as I saw that, that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I've pretty much done that ever since.
Okay. And Tone Morgans, we're going to show a lot of examples of it, but we're just kind of like dipping our feet here into the water. So when we talk about Tone Morgans, we're talking about a silver dollar that has changed in terms of the color on the surface of the coin. There's been a reaction of the silver with some environmental kind of components, and silver normally tarnishes or tones, and it can turn kind of a darker color. But in the case of these coins you're talking about, these are coins that have reacted with their environment and produced kind of all various colors of the rainbow, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So if any of your listeners have ever left out like a silver spoon for a long time, you'll
Hmm.
notice after a few months, that spoon will start to tone. It'll have these like oil slick colors developing on it, and that's just a natural process that happens with certain precious metals like silver.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about Morgan dollars in this episode. So I think it'd make sense to give a short little history about what the Morgan dollar is, why it was created, and why it's significant. I'm going to try to speed through this fairly quickly. So the United States had a silver dollar for a number of years between 1840 and 1870. Two or three. I can't remember when the seated dollar ended, but it was called the Liberty seated dollar. It was a silver dollar that we used mostly for exchange and commerce within the country, but also for foreign exchange, or I should say, to support our interests in foreign trade over in Asia. It had a good solid run, and then in 1873, Congress decided to demonetize silver. So no longer were they going to create money for the country in silver coins. And they called this the crime of 73. And a lot of the silver mining businesses, obviously were in uproar. It had a real problem with this. And the silver mining business and industry had lobbies within Washington. And in 1878, I believe, I have to check my dates, but Congress passed a new act called the Bland-Allison Act, and in this Bland-Allison Act, they agreed to purchase a vast quantity of silver. And as part of the act, part of the law, they had to coin that into silver dollars. Now, the problem is that the U.S. economy didn't really need many silver dollars. There wasn't a lot of demand for silver dollars. And a lot of the economy, especially in the East, they prefer paper currency. So they mostly traded in paper, not so much need for like hard, silver or gold necessarily coins. So there wasn't a whole lot of demand for these silver dollars. So what ended up happening is that they essentially wound up in U.S. Treasury vaults. And they're put into these kind of burlap sacks in 1,000-coin sacks, and they were stashed away into the vaults. And we have this great little picture here to show folks. Okay. And so they put away all of these sacks of Morgan dollars into Treasury vaults. There were 1,000 coins per bag. Now, they did something special with the coins when they went into these bags in order to prevent them from getting, torn apart by rodents and things, right? And that kind of affected what ultimately created this kind of wild, colorful tone. Tell me a little bit more about this process here and what happened with the coins.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Tony. So they minted over all the years. They minted something like over 660 million Morgans, but so many of those, like you mentioned, were just never used, and so they sat in these vaults for decades and decades on end. Now, what they had done is the burlap material that the bags were made of, they had soaked it in sulfur in order to keep rats out. And it was not a lot, but just enough that sulfur over a long period of time started to leach out of the cloth material and started to actually be deposited in a really thin layer on the surface of the coins that were on the outside of the bag. So when that sulfur got deposited on those coins, it reacted with the surface of the silver and formed a compound that we call silver sulfide. And
silver sulfide.
Exactly. What that is basically a semi-translucent layer, very thin, on the surface of the coin that reflects light a lot like a prism. So that image you have pulled up there is a little diagram of this. So the bottom little stripe of silver, that's your silver coin. On top of that, there's that thin silver sulfide layer. I made this diagram many years ago when I wrote my article, but on tone coins. But if I were to redo it, I would actually make that color layer a different thickness. So it would be thinnest over on the left where you have those light colors like peach and blue, and thickest over on the right where you have the darker hues. So because of the varying thickness of that silver sulfide layer, it reflects light differently. And so that's why we see different colors when we look at the coin.
Interesting. So was the buildup of the silver sulfide different concentrations in different parts of the sack? Because there was gravity involved, and they're soaking them in salt and sulfur. Is there any science to that at all, or was the buildup of silver sulfide due to, in different quantities due to a different factor?
Actually, that's a great question. So it had to do a lot with a variety of things, including the angle of the coin in the bag and the airflow going through the bag onto the coin. You don't need a lot of it, but if you have enough, depending on how that coin's angled and sitting in that bag, you're going to get parts of it that will get more air, parts of it that will get less. There's also things like a different coin being in the way, which could affect how much of that silver sulfide is forming. Humidity has a factor as well. There's a few different conditions, but mainly airflow and then the angle that the coin is.
Interesting. So I don't want to wait too long here to show all of our viewers what an example of what these is going to be, but it's safe to say that for some of these examples we have some incredible kind of exceptional pieces to talk about. Not all of them that are in the market, look like this per se, but these are going to be great examples for us to get into wet everybody's whistle, so to speak, on tone Morgans and colorful Morgans, and we're going to talk specifically about what makes these desirable to collectors, and we're going to try to break it down in terms of color and vibrancy and location or pattern on the coin in terms of value and what collectors demand. So pause to go pull this up. Okay. So pulled up a 1882. I'm assuming this is a San Francisco coin. 1882 San Francisco. Those are known for being very vibrant in terms of just basic luster. But here's an example of a monster tone Morgan, and it has all of these different various colors of the rainbow. So walk me through what we're looking at here, and let's talk about what are the components that are desirable from a collector perspective about this coin, and maybe give us a little bit of a range of value in today's market.
So this example you have here is really exceptional. There's a range of toned Morgan dollars. You can have some that have just a small little bit of color or very light pastel-y color, and then very rarely will you get something like this, which is absolutely spectacular and has bright, bold colors over the entire surface. So there's a variety of factors really that contribute to the value of a toned coin, but I would say the number one is going to be the specific colors that you have. So those really bright, vibrant colors like the bright reds, fuchsias, blues, greens that you see a lot of on this coin, those tend to be the most striking. And so a lot of collectors, that's what they prefer. Also, the intensity is probably the number two factor when it comes to toned coins. So you can have two different coins, one that's toned green, another one that's toned green. But if one of them has intense luster and pop to those colors, that's going to be way more valuable than the exact same coin with muted or dull luster. So, and for your listeners who maybe are newer to coins, luster is what we refer to as when you twirl a coin around, the shine that it gives off. Kind of like if you're looking at your silverware again, it might look dull or it might look really shiny. That shiny look is what we like to have for toned coins as well. Then you get into all sorts of other factors. So interesting patterns. This coin actually has something like that in it. It has, if you notice, those little dots that are running all along the face of the coin over the portrait. Those are what's known as textile, and that's actually an imprint from the cloth material of the bag that this coin toned in, which is really cool. It's cool to see how a coin actually developed, and you can see it right there. It shows you the imprint. There's a few other things. Grade, surface preservation is very important too. But I would say those are the main factors.
Are there different colors more valuable? I've heard that greens are typically a much more difficult color to find on these. A, why is that? And B, is it true that there's different value for a coin that has a lot of blue on it, or red, or green, or whatever?
Absolutely. So green, red, fuchsia, and kind of a blue cyan color, which is very much what you see on this coin on the left-hand side. Those tend to be the most valuable. Orange as well, pumpkin orange, is quite rare. And the reason why is these not only are very striking visually, like if you're just thinking about a piece of art, if it has these really bright colors, it's gonna stop you and make you think about it, make you look at it. But the other reason is some of these colors represent very thin bands on that color spectrum that we were looking at earlier, where you have that light peach, blue, yellow, orange going on into these other colors. So a color like cyan, which is a mixture of blue and green, it's a very, very thin band on that color spectrum. So it's very rare that you get much of it in quantity.
So just to kind of reiterate, so we're talking about this layer of silver sulfide that's developing on this coin, and depending on the size of the layer, and maybe some other factors, but specifically the size of the layer, you're going to get a different color on the coin. And so if there's certain colors that are associated with a size of that layer that is only of a certain level, like getting that color is rare because it either is before that band or it's after that band typically. And so if you're kind of right in the middle, it's kind of a rare color to get on a coin. Is that accurate?
Exactly right, Tony. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, the thing I love about this coin definitely is the textile across the face. It is this like marker, the history, because yeah, these things sat in vaults for years, starting in like the 1870s, and then all the way up until the 1960s is when a lot of these came out of the vaults. When we completely demonetized silver again in our coinage, and people, collectors and dealers and whatever went up to banks and they bought large bags of these, and then they started to sell them out to the public and so forth, and people started collecting coins and collecting Morgan dollars, and then we found these things, so 8 decades of silver and sulfide combining with other factors in the moisture of the air and an air circulation within the vaults created these things. So I want to move on to the next one. So this is another really spectacular coin. I notice one of the things that I noticed right away is that we got this incredible level of like red, or I guess this is a magenta, as I mentioned last time. I'm colorblind, so like this is not really my forte, but I do have an appreciation for a lot of these colorful toned coins. But this one, maybe talk to us a little bit about the factors on this particular coin that make it valuable. Give us an idea of, we didn't talk about the last one in terms of just a range here of approximate market value, because this is an 1882 S, what was the grade, MS66 or something?
Yeah, this one's a mint state 66.
Okay, so roughly, yeah, so if this is just a regular plain white, we call white plain silver coin, this would be about a $400 coin roughly. With the toning, with the spectacular rainbow color on this coin, give us a range about what the market would pay for something like this today.
So this coin, and what you don't quite see in the photo is the intensity of the color. It is really jaw-dropping when you look at it in person. So this is a coin that would probably bring between 20 and 25,000 in today's market.
Wow, that is intense. And just to give an idea, what is the highest record price? I don't know if you know off the top of your head, and if it's okay, we can look it up. What is the high? I need an assistant. To look up stuff. But what is the highest auction record for a toned Morgan dollar?
So the highest auction record for one is 61,000 for a beautifully toned example. It happened to also be toned on both sides and was a very, very high grade. However, there are a couple of private sales that actually exceed that, and not necessarily for higher graded coins either.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I do recall one of the very first World's Fair Monies I attended was in 2018. I think it was in Denver. I can't remember. It was either 2017 or 2018. I can put a note later, but they had, I think, that one on display. That one that went for $60,000. I think they had it on this display, possibly. When was the year? Do you remember when that was?
Oh, I want to say 2016 or so.
Okay, so this would have
2017.
Yeah, so then I guess that would have corresponded, because I remember they had the auction record listed right next to the coin. It was spectacular, and yeah, anyways, so that's kind of the high watermark, and that's like 10 years ago pretty much. I mean, the market has evolved, the market has increased on so many coins, especially in 2021, 2022. The market for rare coins just really surged. So interesting. I wonder what what new records we're going to break on some of some of those coins. I'm assuming just haven't come back to market. Is that right?
Yeah, so what tends to happen with a lot of the best of the best is they are purchased by a collector, and that collector, knowing its rarity, keeps it for a very, very long time, and it really doesn't come back on the market until perhaps many decades later. Sometimes they do recirculate, but it's not often at that level.
Gotcha. Okay, so this one, the grade on this one, what are we looking at grade wise for this 1881S?
So this one's a mint state 65.
Okay, so this is a 65. Probably would have suggested that given we have these marks right on the focal area. We're going to talk about this and some of these other coins when we talk about focal areas, especially of the Morgan dollar. It has to do with the grading, the numerical grading of the coin for terms of preservation and quality of the coin. So in this particular example, the focal area of a Morgan dollar is going to be the center cheek as well as right in front of the eyes. It's basically when you look at the coin, it's where your eyes go when you look at the coin. That becomes the focal area. Interesting tidbit I learned at the advanced grading class is that the focal area on a $5 Indian, I don't know if you know this, but a $5 Indian, the focal area is actually on the reverse, right behind the eagle, the feeler behind the eagle. It's interesting. I can throw one up on the video here to showcase that. But anyways, so the focal area on Morgan dollars is going to be the cheek as well as right in front of the eyes here of Lady Liberty. By the way, this is a Morgan dollar, but this is not an image of Morgan. This is actually Lady Liberty. This is the allegorical image created by Charles Morgan of Liberty, the allegorical figure, Lady Liberty. And so anyways, this was designed by Charles Morgan, but right in front of the face of Liberty is going to be one of the focal areas as well as the cheek. So super important when it comes to grading, but also the color aspect that I guess I've learned. So this particular example compared to the previous one, what are we looking at in terms of, this is a mint state 65, so one numerical grade lower from a technical perspective. This is about a $350 coin or so, roughly, maybe less than that. What do we look at in terms of the approximate kind of range of value on something like this one, given all the colors and how well placed they are and so forth?
This one would fall right in that $15,000 range. And the reason why on this particular coin is you do have a lot of those really bright colors. You have that neon green in there, that fuchsia, even some orange down near the date. But you also do get some deeper colors. So you get that magenta, purple color, even some teal up near the top. And although those are beautiful colors, they're not quite as striking, especially in person when you look at the coin, as some of those bright greens. So although this coin is still beautiful, it's not quite as vivid and bright as the other one, at least when you look at the two in person. And so that's kind of the difference in value that you get there. Still a very, very expensive coin, though.
Gotcha. All right, let's move on to the next one here. So this is a one that I do not like. I can tell you right away. I'm not an expert in this stuff, but what is wrong with this coin?
So in any conversation about tone Morgans, unfortunately, you do have to talk about the ones that are artificially toned. So because of the value that the toning adds, like you mentioned, some of these coins we looked at earlier are $300-$400 coins, add the toning in, and it's a 5-figure piece. Yeah. So a lot of, some people have started trying to replicate the toning artificially. So not allowing those coins to sit for 80 years in a sweaty bank vault, but actually trying to accelerate that process using often a sulfur gas. There's some people try to bake the coins in an oven or seal them up with eggs, I've heard is another thing that people have done. But essentially, it's not considered desirable or acceptable in the market because it is not a piece of Mother Nature's art. It's something that somebody tried to do to fake it, essentially.
They're trying to fabricate this look. Yeah,
exactly. On this coin, you can see that the colors are wrong. If you've looked at a lot of toned coins, these colors don't match the ones that you would typically see on a naturally bag-toned Morgan dollar. You'll notice, for example, near the crescents, the two half moons that you see on it, which what somebody tried to do, this is something that happens a lot in mint bag toning, is there's another coin sitting on top of a different coin, and that blocks some of that toning from happening. So somebody tried to replicate that, but the colors are not right there. So if we remember back to that color spectrum we looked at, the bands that you should see in those areas where just a little bit of color was able to get in, just a little bit of silver sulfide was able to form, it should be a light peach, then a very light powder blue, then a thin band of violet, and then yellow. On this coin, you don't see that at all. You see kind of a band of black, and then you get purple and then blue. It's the completely wrong order.
Yeah, it's the opposite, right? Because black would
Yeah,
be the final color, right? That's kind of the terminal toning.
exactly right. So
Yeah.
the other thing you see on this coin is if you look at the stars, especially on the left-hand side, it kind of looks like the stars are not even there. The color's just flowing right over them. But on a Morgan dollar, those stars are raised. And the
Yeah.
way that this reaction occurred on naturally toned coins, those are typically not going to be the same color as the surrounding surfaces. So if we look
Yeah.
back, even, yeah, one
Back
of
to
these examples, you'll notice that the stars are not the exact same blue, and the colors are actually blending very
yeah.
differently as opposed to that artificial coin.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what we have is folks, people that are, yeah. I mean, anytime there's a profit opportunity, every time there's, a market has an opportunity to, you can make a considerable profit on these toners. You have folks that try to replicate, fabricate, fake it, whatever. And this is the case through the history of collectibles, the history of coins, and so on and so forth. But what we have here is we have people that are attempting to accelerate a process that occurred naturally over 8 decades within treasury vaults. They're trying to accelerate that process within a very short period of time using methods to try to create a similar type of design on a coin through these kind of these I don't know, tricks, whatever you want to call them, baking them in the oven and throwing them into frying pans with some sulfur and some eggs and whatever. I mean, it's interesting the fact that people spend time doing this kind of stuff, but they're trying to fool the grading companies and trying to get them into real holders. And this is probably the biggest, the best pitch for why to work with somebody like Jacob, because Jacob is an expert in what is real toning versus artificial toning, and getting the expert opinion about that is super important from preserving your investment, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing really that you can do, I always recommend it to anybody, even if you are working with a dealer, is to still educate yourself. So look
Totally.
at as many examples of naturally toned coins as you can. Learn about the process, learn what to look for, because although it's very rare, it is possible for some of these coins to get by even the best eyes. So if you
Yeah,
educate
that's the
yourself
grading
about it,
companies. Yeah.
that's really going to be the number one thing. If you're looking to get into this market in a serious way, it's definitely
Yeah.
important.
Let's move on to the next one. So I really like this one. We also again have a lot of the different colors of the rainbow. I see this magenta. I see this great green right here. We have now this coin cannot be graded higher than well, no, you got some decent fields, but the cheek is pretty ticky. There's a lot of tick marks, especially along the chin. I'm guessing this is maybe a 64 plus or a 65. What is this?
Yeah, I believe it's a mid-say 65,
It
if
is
I'm
a
remembering
65.
right.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think they probably gave it a 65 because the fields are actually fairly clean. This
Okay.
cheek, I think if all of these marks were kind of in more right in this area, you would have had to limit it to a 64. But anyways, this isn't about grading. So this particular one, anything that you want to point out about this example, give us an idea of kind of the range here of value, but anything instructional, educational about this particular pattern.
So this one is a nice contrast to the two coins that we looked at the beginning, where this one has what's called satiny luster, which is
Okay.
another type of luster that you'll get very often on Morgan dollars, typically the mid to late 1880s, and the Philadelphia mint coins will have a lot of that appearance, New Orleans mint coins as well. So those earlier coins we saw, they were very flashy. This one, when you look at it in person, it's very velvety, almost like a big tub of sorbet, and you could go in there with an ice cream scoop and get a
Hmm.
big scoop of that color. That's kind of the
Okay.
effect that you get on this coin. So it's just a different look. Typically tends not to bring as much as the really flashy appearance, but this
Yeah.
one still has beautiful color, has very vibrant green, fuchsia, golds in there. So this is something that would bring around 5,000 or so in today's market.
Okay. Yeah, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. It kind of is very similar to a coin that I once owned. It was an 1878 Carson City Morgan. It was an MS64 Plus with a CAC sticker, and it had toning that looked just like this one. And I think ultimately the market where it landed was right around that $5,000 range. I sold it really early in my kind of quote unquote career, back when this was just a side hustle for me. I sold it probably too cheap, and I know the coin resold for around that figure. So that makes sense. I think you're spot on. Let's move on to this one. So, tell me what's unique about this particular example, because we got a lot of colors here, but I feel like this is very muted and there's not a lot of luster.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an example of where the grade of a coin is somewhat secondary to the visual appearance of it. So this is a coin that's actually graded very high. It's a Mint State 67. It's the highest graded one that we've seen so far. However, and it even has some of that green color that we talked about is very desirable. But if we
Mm-hmm.
notice, the focal area of the coin, where
Yeah.
right in front of the face, is actually
Okay.
much darker. It's toned that darker purple color. And
Okay.
because that's the focal area, the value of this coin is significantly less than if the colors were flipped and the green was there and the darker purple was somewhere behind the portrait of Liberty. So market
Really?
value on something like this is more like 3,500, 4,000, rather
Okay.
than what we saw earlier.
Interesting. Very interesting. I want to keep moving here for the sake of time, because I know we got this one coming up, which is I when I first saw this coin, I thought this was artificial toning because of how like wild it was. Because a lot of artificial tone Morgans kind of have really splotchy, kind of wildish things happening on the coin. But this is completely real. This is completely natural, and we have just walk us through this one. And we got a lot of green, which green is good, but we also have this incredible display of color happening right in the key focal area, right in front of the eyes of Lady Liberty. So tell us a little bit about this one, and again, kind of a rough idea of value here.
Sure. So this coin, it is very striking. The colors are very, very bright and neon. And at first glance, it might look almost like it's an artificial coin because the colors tend most of the time not to look that bright. However, what we can see on this one is it actually does have the right colors and the right progression if we look particularly in that focal area. The other thing that it has is that really crazy wild pattern. And what that is not only do we see those dots that we talked about is the textile pattern from the burlap bags, we also have a bunch of these twists and turns, almost like a piece of string that's threaded together. And in fact, that
Yeah.
is actually the string. That is the string from the seam of the bank bag where it was sewn together that
Wow.
actually got imprinted onto this coin.
Yeah, that is just wild. So talk about piece of piece of history. I feel like it's another one of these expressions that's way overused as when we sell coins and we talk about coins and so forth, is calling everything a piece of history. But they are. But talk about something that has a real history behind it. You can think about this coin sitting up against a seam in the bag and having a particular thread that is reacting with the surface of the coin. And what's cool is how this color, this yellow, I guess orangish yellowish color, is right kind of coming into the eyes of Lady Liberty. So I feel like it's like almost like inspiration from the heavens kind of thing happening. I think it's pretty cool. And then of course you have this huge amount of green, which is a really important. Yeah, actually, well, you have two different shades of green, right? You got green across the face here, and then you have this kind of more. What would this be? More of a neon green back here?
Yeah, you have a little bit of neon green in that area where you were pointing out, a little bit of a more muted green over the cheek, and you
Mm-hmm.
have some shades of cyan, a little bit of blue. You have some blue and purple by the date
Got
as
it.
well. So yeah, it really does have a
I'm
lot
just
of
curious.
dynamics to it.
What is the mint mark on this? Is this a Philadelphia or an Orleans?
This is a New Orleans.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because for those that don't know, the 1884S is a extreme rarity within, especially within mint state grades, and it's an extremely expensive coin. So if you had one that had like this kind of color on it, I don't know. I mean, it would just break the
That
stratosphere
would
of
set a record without a doubt.
yeah, the combination, yeah, for sure. So we'll give us an idea here of a rough band of value on this particular one in today's marketplace.
So this one would fall right around the 15 to maybe $20,000 range value
Okay.
wise. Now, a lot of that has to do with the luster quality. Because it's a New Orleans mint, the luster is more of that satiny, velvety look versus the really
Hmm.
shiny, lustrous S mint. If this were an S mint coin, the value could potentially even be double that.
Yeah, I was just thinking around 30,000 or so. If you had the luster like that first one that we had going all the way back to our beginning here, the luster of this coin you can just even tell from the image is just off the charts. So if you had the luster of this one combined with the color spectrum and what's going on in this one, I could see it being a $30,000 coin. Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. Let's talk about this guy. So this is a very, very interesting piece. This is a reverse toner. So this is the reverse of the Morgan dollar with the eagle on the reverse. We got a lot of cool things going on. I'll give you the floor here to talk us through this one and give us an idea of value here. But this is also your example of a lower graded coin. Is that right?
Yes. So there's a few different things that do impact the value of the coin. We talked about in part the surface preservation, and typically a lower graded coin with rougher surfaces is not going to command as much value as something that's really clean because it's a lot rarer to find a coin that's very clean with toning as well than it is to find a coin that's much more beat up because a lot of coins were in the bag. So the obverse of this coin is very, very rough. It's only graded a mint state 63. However, what's special about this coin is it's just absolutely stunning visually. It has really, really bright, intense greens, blues, and fuchsia. It has a ton of luster, which you can, even in the photo, you can see, but it's
Yeah, you can see
even
that.
more dynamic in person. And it has a really, really cool pattern with that burlap textile that we can see on the eagle and all over the wings, even in the fields
Yeah,
as well. So
yeah,
it's kind of a an example of the exception to the rule where typically a lower grade may not bring as much, but in this case it's still worth a lot because it's so beautiful and so nice. The other thing is it's toned on the reverse of the coin. All of the other examples we looked at were toned on the
yeah.
front, the side that most people would look at. And typically reverse toned coins do not bring as much as a obverse toned example would.
Okay. Yeah, this is spectacular. I love the outline in orange around the whole eagle. I mean, it's pretty much in all the key kind of parts. It's like there's like a flame kind of behind the eagle almost that's kind of bursting through the feathers. You have this and the motto "In God We Trust" that's also been highlighted in this orange. I love this coin. I think it's absolutely amazing. So, give us an idea, kind of roughly, of where the market would price something like this.
So I'll just say offers of north of 10,000 have been made on this coin from multiple different people. So probably somewhere in the 10 to $15,000 range is where this would
Yeah,
fall, which is
yeah,
very unusual for a reverse toned low grade coin.
sure. Well, spectacular. I don't know if there's anything else out there that's like this, and that's getting back to what we talked about with them being works of art. This is a great example of something that is sort of nature's handiwork, nature's artwork, and you're buying an opportunity to preserve or be the custodian of this piece of art, so to speak, that you're going to hold on to for some time, some decade, and then hand over to the next curator, so to speak, and custodian of the artwork. This is incredible. Considering also that this coin, if it was completely bright white and it's just silver, this is probably $80 coin or something. But with all of these colors, we're looking at maybe close to $15,000, which is absolutely incredible. So I'm going to stop our share. Okay, I'm keeping an eye on the time. So I just want to give you an opportunity to tell everyone a little bit more about where they can find you, about how to do business with you. Do you work with collectors? Do you work with dealers? Do you do a lot of business on your website, on Instagram, and just in general, like where can people find you and how they can, go about, getting getting a relationship with you to start buying some of these.
Sure. So I work very much with both collectors and dealers. I have a really wonderful base of collectors who are very serious about these toned coins and want the best of the best pieces, and we try to do our best to find ones that suit their collection. There's a lot of different ways to collect toners. You can collect them by date. You can collect them by the type of toning. You can try to get one of every single color. There's so many different ways to do it, different patterns. So I work with a lot of collectors in that sense, actually all the way from entry level to the very, very advanced collectors. And then I also do a lot of business with dealers as well, supplying just wholesaling coins for them, supplying them with examples for their own collector bases, also ranging from entry-level pieces all the way to really amazing
I remember
examples.
at the fun show, I wasted your time for like 20 minutes as I looked through all of your coins you had for sale. And I didn't buy anything because I didn't feel really confident enough in understanding this market enough. But it gave me the idea to have you on the podcast, give everybody some information about how to look at these coins and approach them, and helped me out as well. So, hey man, thank you so much for doing this. I think we just kind of hit the really tip of the iceberg on some of the questions that I had about this market and about how you approach this and so forth. But this was a fantastic introduction for people on colorful toned Morgans. So I just want to say thank you again. And specifically, where can people find you? You have a website, right?
I do, yes. So you can find me through my website. It's monstertonedmorgans.com. Feel free to contact me there, or the best way to reach out to me is actually through Instagram. I'm Monster Tone Morgans on Instagram as well. Feel free to shoot me a direct message if you want to work with me, or if you have a question about toning. I'm also always more than happy to discuss it.
Awesome. So that's monstertonemorgans.com, or reach out through Instagram, and we'll put both of those in the show notes of the episode. So, all right, thank you very much. I know you got to get over to the airport. So, thanks again, and we'll talk again for sure. Thanks.
Sounds good. My pleasure, Tony. Thank you.